Hello again. In the first session on the influence of higher education on chaplaincy, I'm going to talk about the nature of chaplaincy in general. And in my second session, I will talk about the nature of higher education chaplaincy and how that can inform chaplaincy practice across the different sectors, including health, law enforcement, and the armed services. So what is being a chaplain all about? These questions of role and purpose will need to be present almost continuously in our minds when we are in service as chaplains. The reason that we must keep asking the question is because what we are doing and why we're doing it is, in a special way, permanently at the very heart of the vocation to be a chaplain. What are the reasons that I'm suggesting for remaining in a state of questioning? Well, partly this is because there is a triangular relationship between ourselves, the divine, and the host organization where we serve. Another reason is that because we are serving as religious leaders in an organization that has a different purpose to a religious one, we are there to serve and to seek to find out how we may help. Naturally, as chaplains, we'll be very conscious that we want to serve the organization without it being a second master of us. This is the case, I know, as a Christian, for every Christian, not just religious ministers, but for Christians working in business or in industry or as a university employee or student. What happens for the chaplain is it is brought into sharper focus. We are seeking to embody Christian service, and for that matter, the Muslim chaplain to embody Muslim service, or the Hindu chaplain to embody Hindu service as well. As chaplains, we are the guests in a host organization, and as the guest, we must often wait to find out what is needed and wanted of us. This is an important place to stand, since, more ordinarily, the religious leader has as their home the church, as their familiar and matched safe harbour or haven. This task of being a chaplain places each person in such a role away from the familiar and in the shipping lanes that are managed by a different authority. It is not that we serve that different authority or master, but we learn to navigate our way as chaplains according to a new set of rules, a different type of language. We position ourselves in relationship to that organization's principles and priorities while maintaining our own principles and priorities in spiritual lives too. To continue that shipping lane metaphor for a little longer, the language spoken in the host organization might be quite different to what we are familiar with in other spheres of our life. Even how we can speak of our belief, our faith, our religious practice will feel very different. How we describe our work to others in the organization will require different terms which they'll understand and which fit in well. We will each be well aware that we are viewed in our work in a host organization through a different lens to the lens through which people see us when we're in an entirely religious sphere. What we also have to acquire is a way to see how others see us and speak a language that the people who encounter us will understand. We do this so that we can be recognized as helping fulfill the organization's purposes and priorities and show that we are abiding by common principles Of course, if we operate in ways that are less sensitive than this, we may survive for a while, but it is a bit like being a ship's captain or first officer deciding not to agree the general rules for a shipping lane, and instead of sticking to the agreed rules, improvising or applying a different set of rules and hoping for the best. And so this means when we are working as a chaplain in the host organization, each time a new type of request for assistance comes to us, or we take the initiative and suggest a way we can serve, we may have to ask ourselves one of many questions. Is this what I am to do here? Can I tolerate the tension between my religious vocation and the organization's interests? Does every act of service need to be understood as a religious action that I undertake? And can I support the spiritual well-being of people, whether they have the same belief as me? Of course, once we have dealt with one type of request, usually we will not need to ask these questions every time exactly the same sort of request comes in. This is one exciting element of chaplaincy work, however, is discovering the new requests that do come in as the organization recognizes that there is another task that they would appreciate a chaplain assisting with. Let's take a moment, though, as we reflect on these very present realities of being a chaplain, to step back to the history, the origins, and the traditions of chaplaincy since they start back in the 4th century. And so there is much to learn from and build upon. We are not the first people to set out on such a voyage. Chaplain, both as a concept and the word itself, arises from the Christian ministry of Martin of Tours. And he was, and chaplaincy was built as an understanding of what it is to compromise. When Martin cuts his cloak in two to share it with a beggar, he, as a soldier, retains his own responsibility to be clothed, but also sees his responsibility equally lies with the wider world and the well-being of all. The matter of role tension, and even of being able to divide something as singular as what it means to meet our own basic needs so that the next person's basic needs are met. Doing this is part of the calling of the chaplain. It is not a calling to change who we are or what beliefs we hold to, but it is a calling that means we may need to decrease so that others may increase by sharing our cloak or half of our cloak with another. Even if the person we meet is other than us, different to us, if their priorities and principles are different to ours, our calling as a chaplain is many times to share what we have, even if it diminishes our power and our status for the sake of raising up the other, as long as it doesn't diminish our belief or mean we have to change it. This is how we arrive at the situation for chaplains in the armed services, as one precise example, where the chaplain takes the rank of the officer they are speaking with, the equal of each person, diminished or raised up in rank, but still sharing with equal respect. Of course, it is important to show great respect still to all the people that we serve, and perhaps some of those we serve stand more on their dignity than the next person, but raising up each person we serve, however low the organization may esteem that individual, is an important way in which a chaplain can be a force for helping the organization to show more humanity to all its members. The humanity of an organization is all important, as I said in my opening remarks, because however imperfect organizations are, they are established by humans and run by humans for humans. And where their purpose is the well-being and improvement of society, then they have some clear humanistic values. And yet organizations can become places like families that may become dysfunctional in certain aspects. Just as in the family setting, one family may be very good at making the food and cleaning, the same family may have arguments about the repairs that need to be done to the house. The next family may be excellent at educating themselves and doing the gardening, but weaker in looking after their own health. In a very similar way, one human organization may have an excellent approach in some areas, which helps elevate the humans that are working there or being served. But the same organization will have areas where they're weaker. This is where the role of the chaplain can serve as the critical friend of the organization. This is a very important and delicate task. It first requires a good understanding of the rules of that shipping lane that you are in. It also requires the chaplain to be respected as a person, not just for their role. In addition, the chaplain who is esteemed for making a positive contribution overall is more likely to be listened to. It is also that the chaplain understands the geography of the place, but more about that in my second part to the talk. Finally, only so many critical friend questions can be asked of the organization at any one time or in any one year, and this must be done with great sensitivity and humility, and without any sense of superiority or the appearance of being judgmental, since providing a non-judgmental service is also part of the balancing act of the chaplain. But more about that balancing act in the second part of my talk. Finally, to close part one, chaplaincy practice in the local setting has been formed by the different contexts where chaplaincy has developed. Where higher education has accepted chaplains, the notion of what pastoral support can look like and how the chaplain can be the critical friend to the organization has developed in unique ways. And this is much of what we're going to be exploring in the second part of my talks. But first, I'm hoping we may do some questions and answers about this first part, or perhaps we'll do that at the end, depending how we can deliver this talk across the many thousands of miles between Sheffield and your gathering in Malawi.